Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. Welcome to part 2 of Let's Go for a Walk, using historical walks to uncover the African presence in our local area. Lesson 4, the Claudia Jones Organisation, 103 Stoke Newington Road, Hackney. Stop 3. Did you find any information about the origins of the name of your street? If you did, what might it tell you about the history of your local area? And what type of source are street names? This is the third stop on our virtual walk and an example of how the vision, ethos and values of an individual can live on and become a legacy through setting up organisations in their name. What does the word legacy mean? Claudia Jones, 1915 to 1964, was a prominent activist, feminist and nationalist. Discuss the definitions of feminist and nationalist with guided discussion within an appropriate context. Why might it have been particularly difficult for a woman of African Caribbean origin to voice their opinions in public? Claudia is more famously known as one of the founding members of the Notting Hill Carnival, the second largest carnival in the world. However, in 1958, Claudia also founded the first major newspaper for African Caribbean communities in Britain, called the West Indian Gazette. It was later renamed the West Indian Gazette and Afro-Asian Caribbean News. What do you think influenced Claudia's decision to rename the newspaper? Do now. Prepare up to 3 different examples of the front page of the West Indian Gazette. This could be from the launch, peak, and at the end of the newspaper's run. The last copy was printed in 1965. Starter. Pupils could work in small groups to look at one of the front pages of the West Indian Gazette. What purpose did the newspaper serve? How useful is this as a historical source in telling us what the main issues of concern were for the African, Asian, Caribbean communities in Britain at this time? Revise over the use of bias and any other features related to prior learning about newspapers. Main task. Watch a short video to introduce the life and achievements of Claudia Jones. Compare the life of Claudia with C.L.R. James. What contrasts and parallels can we find between the two figures? For example, both were from Trinidad and born in the same era. Both were activists and gave speeches and wrote articles about their views. Both networked and worked with other activists who were prominent African Caribbean figures. One wrote a novel, the other founded a newspaper. Both spoke out about injustice and inequality in their country due to being part of the British Empire, though only one had the challenges of gender inequality. Plenary. Pupils can present their profiles on both figures and evaluate how one of the figures has made an impact either locally or nationally. Pupils can evaluate the usefulness of the sources that they have used to carry out their inquiry and to think about how reliable they were in helping them develop perspectives about these two figures. Let's go to our knowledge tree and record any more sources which have helped us today in our virtual walk. Organisations, newspapers, and cultural events. Which of these are primary sources and which are secondary? Homework. Visit the CLR James Library and spend some time browsing the books in the children's section. What other sources in the library's archive might be held about CLR James and Claudia Jones? And why not consider signing up for library membership if you have not already? Lesson 5. Abney Park Cemetery, Stoke Newington High Street, Hackney. Stop 4. Who made a visit to the CLR James Library? What did you do there? Did you enjoy it? This is the 4th and final stop on our virtual tour. Who has visited Abney Park Cemetery? Where is it located in Stoke Newington, and do you know anything about its history? Why do you think the stop has been included in our virtual walk? Abney Park Cemetery is famous for the number of people buried there who actively campaigned against the slave trade. These people were collectively called abolitionists. Do now. Present a map of Stoke Newington and locate Abney Park Cemetery. Where is it situated and what key routes and places are located close by? What map symbols do pupils recognise from their prior learning about map work? How do we know that this cemetery was an important site? Starter. Visit the website for Abney Park Cemetery and evaluate how useful it is as a source for helping us to find out about the past in Stoke Newington. How can we find out if any African Caribbean figures were buried there? Main task. Take a look at the leaflet provided, downloaded from the site. What information does it tell us about the cemetery? Look at the map of the cemetery and key figures whose graves have been identified. How can we find out if any of these were prominent Africans? Look at the photo of the tomb of Joanna Vassa, daughter of Alada Equiano. Have you heard of him? Do you know who he was? Let's watch a short video about his life and achievements. Take some notes and produce a summary of what we've recorded. If his daughter was buried there, then what links does Alada have with Stoke Newington, and how can we find out? What was Joanna well known for, and how did she contribute towards the abolitionist movement? Create a poster to advertise the abolitionist movement here in Britain, and provide examples for them to create ideas from. Plenary. Pupils share their summaries and posters and reflect on what they have learnt in this session. Who were the other African abolitionists buried at the cemetery? Revisit the leaflet and look at the other individuals who have been identified. How can we find out more about each individual? Let's go to our knowledge tree and record any more sources which have helped us today in our virtual walk, such as websites, leaflets and maps. Which of these are primary sources and which of these are secondary ones? Homework. From what you have learnt from this session, write a job description for an abolitionist. What would be a list of actions for them to carry out to help in campaigning to abolish slavery? Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Do you feel like you're stuck in a dinner rut? With HelloFresh, you get fresh pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun and affordable. You can now enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. With over 25 recipes to choose from each week, there is something for everyone to enjoy. All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to ensure deliciousness and simplicity. Just go to the link in our show notes to get 50% off your first box and then 35% off your next 3 boxes. That's the link in our show notes for 50% off your first box and then 35% off your next 3 boxes. It's HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. Lesson 6. Revision and evaluation of the learning sequence. In this, our final session, pupils will have the opportunity to carry out their own reflection on their learning about the lives of significant people and periods in the past. We will also conduct a whole class evaluation on the usefulness of historical walks to support this learning and provide a framework to facilitate ongoing learning about the topics and using this approach. Do now. Present photos of the 4 stops along our virtual walk, as well as a local map of Dalston and Stoke Newington. Starter. Let's reflect on the activities and learning that we have experienced in this learning sequence. What do we now know about using historical walks to help us learn about the past? How has this walk helped us to find out about the African Caribbean presence in the local area? Let's look at our knowledge tree and review the range of sources that we have discovered and used in this learning sequence. We can divide the tree in half and sort them into 2 groups of primary and secondary sources. And let's revise over the associated characteristics of each group. Main task. How could we adapt this walk into a live walk instead of a virtual one? Use the photos and map to locate each stop and plan a route to stop at each one. Where would you begin? Would you change the order of the stops and why? What roads would you travel on? And would you take accessibility into account and use other types of transport such as the bus? Would you add more stops? And do you know of any other evidence of African Caribbean presence to include in the walk? For example, a bookshop, a restaurant, or a blue plaque. Plenary. Pupils share ideas on what further learning they would like to make about any of the aspects raised during the learning sequence. Provide a simple template for them to complete in order to help with planning and conducting their own ongoing learning about evidence of the past in their local community. And as for the knowledge tree, well, that can be displayed in the history area of the classroom and be used as an excellent source of reference to support learning with past, current, and any future history topics that the class will encounter. Homework. Have a go at trying out the route that you have planned and visit all 4 stops. Make a list of any other sources that you notice during your route. Are they primary or secondary sources? And finally, present to your peers, the whole class, what you have found out once you've completed your walk. Well, that's the end of our learning sequence for Let's Go for a Walk, using historical walks to uncover the African presence in our local area. If you like this podcast, then stay on this listening platform and listen to my other podcasts related to this one, such as Colonialism on Your Doorstep from the first season and the Stories So Far podcasts from both the first and second seasons, where I share readings and anecdotes from my stories, especially geared for 9 to 14-year-olds. And speaking of stories, don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to Be Told movement, my poetic narratives, Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Nights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference, 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. They are all available on the website and on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback formats. And I'm also excited about the publication of 4 new titles for this summer. If you want to find out more, visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning pages for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for New York. The paperbacks and Kindle versions for each title are also live on Amazon. And don't forget to enter the draw for a free copy of Aspiring Authors magazine for Black History 2022. If you want to be in with a chance of being my winner for the month of August, just visit the website and register for your free samples of my first 4 titles to enter. I'll be choosing a winner every month up to and including October. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click onto whatever social media link you'd like to follow us on. And as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to Be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed. Thanks so much for listening again, and I'll see you on the next page.